We're back one more time with Kelly Cunningham-Hahn and Caleb Copley. I want to get to one more issue, and it's recently about the juvenile detention center. We know that there was some controversy about the location and whether one was even needed. I guess I want to get to kind of a twofold question. How do you see juvenile crime in this area? What can be done about it? And also bring in the gang activity portion of things, because a lot of these kids are younger and getting into these gangs. Do you see it as more of an intervention issue or an imprisonment issue to go after these things? Kelly Cunningham-Hahn.
I don't see it as either, and I think that takes some understanding of the juvenile system. When a juvenile commits a crime, it's different in terms of how that case is handled versus an adult. So if an adult commits a crime, very simply law enforcement does the investigation, they issue the criminal complaint, that criminal complaint is then filed with the clerk of court, and then that complaint comes to our office for purposes of prosecution. When a juvenile commits a crime, the investigation involves reaching out to the parent or a responsible adult who has to come down to the department, and after the officers have their contact with that juvenile, they have to release them into the community. And then at that point in time, that case is referred over to juvenile court services, and juvenile court services can make a decision about how they want to approach that case. They can decide not to do anything with the case. They can decide to do what I would describe as an informal probation, offer services to the juvenile, and then close the case out. Or they can decide to refer the case to the Scott County Attorney's Office for purposes of prosecution. Bearing in mind that system, when you are dealing with juveniles who are committing violent crimes, and one of the things that I think needs to be recognized is adults are using juveniles in the commission of crimes because they believe that that essentially will insulate them, and they know that how the criminal justice system looks at juveniles is completely different, and how we approach the issue of dispositions relative to those children when they go through the adjudicatory phase. The detention centers are very, very important for these reasons, or the detention center is. If a juvenile is a real problem and they pose a real threat to the community, you can place them within this detention center, and it's essentially a facility where they are housed during the pendency of the prosecution. But there is a review process associated with that. So if a juvenile is brought in and placed within the detention center, then according to statute, there has to be a hearing held before the court every few days to decide whether or not that detention should remain in place. And it's very, very important, and the public does not understand it. I think the public views the detention center essentially as a juvenile prison, and that is not what it is at all. It's housing juveniles who are committing violent crimes and protecting the community.
Caleb Copley, I want to get you in on this, the need for the juvenile detention center and intervention versus imprisonment.
Yeah, so I'm going to start with the shorter one, which is the juvenile detention center. Quite simply, we need a new one. The juvenile detention center that we have now was built in the 1980s, or not even built, it was transformed from a used car lot into a juvenile detention center. It has long outlived its welcome, and quite frankly, everyone in the community at this point, the vast majority agrees, we need a new juvenile detention center. What has become the fighting issue today is the size of it, and quite frankly, we need a bigger juvenile detention center based on the amount of crime that we have, in part because we don't want to have to send children 2 hours away, so that they're not able to see their families, so that they're not able to meet with their lawyers, and so that they're not able to get their cases resolved. But the fighting issue right now, at least for some of the members in, for example, the LULAC and the NAACP communities, are how big. And so I think that's the fighting issue there. In terms of intervention versus imprisonment, of course, I'm going to give you the lawyer answer. It depends. I think for the most part, I don't think we've done a great job with the kids in our community. And that's a challenge that I'm issuing to all of our community, is that we need to do better. So one of the things that my office is doing as part of group violence intervention is we're actually partnering with Family Resources. They have a really good CAP program that is really trying to get people into these at-risk homes where these children are most at risk of being involved with violence, to try and help, to try and get them diverted on a path that gets them away from it so that they never get involved with the criminal justice system. Quite frankly, and I don't know if maybe this is what it is in Muscatine, but the juvenile problem is not being driven by adults telling kids what to do and giving them guns and saying, go shoot up the town. Unfortunately, a lot of it is unstable homes, poverty, and frankly not enough supervision from the parent or parents that are inside the home, and it leads to them committing crimes. So yes, if you're out shooting, if you are out repeatedly stealing cars or doing bad things like that, yes, I do believe that we need to hold them or keep them off the street until they can be made safe to be back and released to the community. But again, it's not prison. There is a constant review process for it, but I do believe it has to be a healthy blend of both.
Well, we're out of time. Caleb Copley, Kelly Cunningham, thank you both for the conversation. We'll be watching what happens on Election Day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We also have one more topic with them for you online at webextra.quadcities.com. That one focuses on what can be done as prosecutors about gangs. Right now, our question of the week: what approach do you think should be taken to address juvenile crime? You can send your answer by email to fortherecord at whbf.com, or respond to this post on Facebook at the Local 4 News WHBF TV page on my page.